Parking the taxi on the side of the road, the driver stopped the engine. He raised his arms over his head. After touching the ceiling, he dropped them down and proceeded on to wriggle on his seat. It was a lousy attempt to alleviate the tenseness from his stiff back. Chronic back pain was guaranteed with this occupation, especially when he had been driving through the Tokyo streets for decades. Alighting from the vehicle, he ducked into the closest convenience store. Once spotting the hot beverages section, he did a quick scan over the drinks before finding his preferred coffee.
200 yen, please.
Hand digging into his back pocket, he took out a bunch of loose coins and placed the precise amounts onto the counter. The driver lifted his head and found himself staring longer than he should have. How could he not, when the cashier before him had, well, purple hair? Her dyed purple hair made her look like a foreigner from a different country. It wasn't the large circular glasses that framed half of her face, the wide, toothy grin, nor the neon orange nail polish that had caught his attention. It was her hair. What was wrong with society these days? Out of all the colors the young woman had chosen, why had she picked an unnatural purple? What would her parents think? Was she on drugs? Maybe she had tattoos too. Why had the convenience store hired her when she looked like a Yankee who might be affiliated with the mafia? Questions swirled in his mind as he took his coffee from the counter with a slight bow. When he returned to the car, the taxi driver unscrewed the cap and took a sip of the coffee. He closed his eyes, savoring the warm liquid that touched his tongue. He had needed the caffeine hit. Because it was a Saturday night, it was even more likely that his customers' state of minds would be of the intoxicated manner. The survival drink would help him cope with the upcoming absurdness that laid on ahead. Knowing that his break was well over, the taxi driver proceeded to start the car. In the process, he paused when shrill screaming sliced into the silent air.
You let go of her now, you piece of trash!
The taxi driver winced at the vulgar choice of words, but did not dare to turn his head around. He recognized it to the sound of the cashier's voice who had served him earlier. He opted to glance at the rearview mirror, invasively witnessing the scene unfolding before him. The cashier was there all right. From the looks of things, she must have finished her shift. She had a backpack slung over her shoulder and wore a jacket that covered her mart uniform. Her hands were on her waist as she faced the couple who gazed at her back, alarmed expressions present on their faces.
What's your problem, lady?
The man was a head taller than the purple-headed woman. He was using his height to his leverage to admonish the cashier. His arm rested possessively around his girlfriend's lower back, leering down at the cashier, who stood before him. However, the man's intimidation tactic failed to work on the cashier. She had resorted to tilting her chin upwards, openly glaring at the man with fire in her eyes. She was going to have nothing of his nonsense.
You heard me right. Get your filthy hands off of her!
Mind your own business. You have no right to meddle with something that doesn't concern you.
As the driver watched, he wished the cashier would turn away from the escalating fight. Why was the cashier being so silly to involve herself in matters that were none of her business? To the driver's dismay, the man's comments had made her even more enraged. She then glanced over at the man's partner who was shooting a pleading look at the purple-haired woman. The man's partner didn't want the cashier to make a scene in public.
Are you sure? Your boyfriend is an asshole.
What did you say?
I'm just telling her the truth and advising that she's better off dumping filth like you.
I don't want to fight you, but I will if you won't leave us alone.
To the taxi driver's surprise, the cashier had pressed her palms onto the man's chest instead of replying. The cashier then took the girlfriend's wrist and wrenched her away from the man's grasp.
What the fuck?
He never managed to end his sentence because the cashier's fist smashed into his gut. The man was keeling over coughing, wide-eyed, and staring at the cashier in a dazed-like state.
Bitch.
Why, thank you. Now get out of my sight before I tell my manager to call the authorities.
Women with big mouths are bound to land themselves in trouble. I'd be careful if I were you.
His words apparently didn't seem to affect the cashier. As she glared unblinkingly at him, she didn't appear the least bit threatened by the man at all. And because of her unwavering glaring, the man eventually did cower away.
Let's go, Yuka.
The girlfriend seemed not too keen to leave with the man, refusing to move from the spot. Consequently, the man met Yuka's gaze, and she shook her head at him.
Suit yourself!
As he walked away, the girlfriend tried to shake the cashier's hold from her wrist in order to chase after him. The cashier did not let go.
You shouldn't go after him. He's not worth it. It's enough that he's hitting you in public. What more will he do to you if he isn't the least bit ashamed of it? And don't tell me those bruises on your arms are by accident too. Stop hiding and protecting someone who doesn't treat you with respect. You should never tolerate somebody hurting you like that. Honey, you're worth more than that.
Yuka broke down in tears, and the cashier gave her a reassuring hug. The driver sheepishly looked away from the scene, letting out a deep sigh. He had been close to dialing the police in case the fighting had gotten out of control. How he was thankful that the arguing had been brought to an abrupt end. As he started the engine and was about to slip back onto the road, he heard somebody tapping onto the window. The driver glimpsed purple in the rearview mirror. Just his luck. His first passenger of the night had to be the rebellious cashier.
Where to, miss?
Roppongi, please.
Regretting that he had missed his chance to drive off, the driver sucked in a deep breath. He opened the back door, allowing the cashier to take a seat. Regardless of it all, it was his job to cater to the people who were in need of transportation. The taxi eased into the ongoing traffic. The sooner he got rid of her, the better. She was a delinquent. She couldn't be trusted. If she was willing to challenge a man who was twice her size to a brawl, it was possible that she could also do a runner. The taxi driver hoped she'd pay him. Although she seemed like a Yankee, there was still a possibility of her being a good person too. After all, the taxi driver had seen her save the woman from an abusive relationship back there. Nearing 10 minutes into their drive, the taxi driver snuck a peek at the cashier. The cashier's arms were crossed with one leg folded over the other. Her bottom lip was jutting outwards, and there was an evident scowl on her face. Hips facing towards the window, her eyes blazed out the window, as if she willed everything to melt under her gaze. She may not have uttered a single word, but her body language spoke in volumes. As the driver was about to look away, her eyes connected with his in the rearview mirror.
Why are men pigs? Select few, I mean.
Has this got to do with the incident from earlier?
You heard that?
Well, it wasn't hard to miss it. You have a lot of guts to do what you did, young lady.
Are you saying that I'm wrong? Was I meant to just watch it happen and not do anything about it? If I had, I'd be worse than that man.
No, I never said that you were wrong. However, I do think he approached the situation wrong. He could have hurt you.
He could have. Little does that idiot know that this woman knows a thing or two about kickboxing. I would have gladly taken him on.
That's not very ladylike.
Well, that's not a great way to describe a lady either. That is what's wrong with people these days. Because I'm a female doesn't mean I have to be stereotyped as mentally and physically weak. Men always think that we can be walked on. When I speak my opinion, I get looked down on. They say I'm not passive enough, which is a lot of bullshit if you ask me. I don't want to be like my friends who end their careers to become appointed as the typical full-time housewife. Tell me, sir, how is that fair? They say that nowadays is better, but I don't see a big change. Men still treat women like dirt and not as equals. They have it in their systems to dominate the world when the only difference is that while we have a set of boobs, they have a set of balls.
Language! I don't care whether you're female or male. I will not tolerate anybody of your age to crudely yap around like a barbarian, especially when I'm the older one here.
Sorry. My friends do tell me I get overly excited and passionate about things that strike a nerve.
It's fine, miss.
He knew that he had also stepped over the boundary too. The taxi driver had been anything but professional. If his manager had heard that he had yelled back at a customer, he would be dismissed on the spot. Attempting to fill the void of awkwardness, the taxi driver turned on the radio. He noticed that the young lady would bob her head to the songs, humming softly as they threaded through the city. Upon arrival to the clubbing area district, the taxi driver slowed down.
Did you want me to drop you off here?
Why? It's still 5 minutes away. We're on the right street, though. Keep driving down.
Sorry about that. I thought you wanted to go to a club.
The cashier eyed him through the window. The driver was worried that she would get mad at him for his assumption, since she had been quite fiery all night. But, to his surprise, the cashier cracked up laughing.
With this outfit? No way! I'm going to my other part-time job. Besides, if I did go clubbing, my parents would have my head tomorrow. They'd hate to see me hungover at church.
Church?
Yeah, I've been attending Mass ever since I was a kid. To be honest, I reckon my whole family would have been separated if it hadn't been for our religion.
Why?
Because it's a habit. We see each other every Sunday. Even when all my siblings and I moved out of home, we're still a family when we go to church. It has always been that way. My family is big and we're all stubborn, so we're endlessly quarreling. Yet, we restart our week and throw back our grudges every time Sunday comes along. I may not be the most religious person out there, but if it works for my family, I'd keep going to Mass until the day I die.
The driver nodded, not knowing what to say. His eyes softened a bit as he gripped the steering wheel. Every second longer he spent with the cashier, he realized how wrong he had been about the young lady. She may have appeared hard on the outside, but she was actually quite warm on the inside.
I used to get jealous of families with a small number, but now that I'm older, I wouldn't have it any other way. Though, there are times when I wish that I was an only child because then I wouldn't be having to take extra jobs to pay off my tuition. Talking about jobs, you can park here.
The taxi driver swerved in front of a gas station. When he had pulled up the brakes, the cashier zipped up her jacket and placed the gas station's cap over her head, flicking out her ponytail.
Thanks.
He glanced at the coins and realized that she had given him 500 yen extra.
You overpaid me!
Don't worry about it, sir. You were going to call the police, right?
What?
Even though you were in the car the whole time, I knew you were keeping an eye out on me back there. I was brave enough to confront that man because I knew you were watching us.
I wasn't really.
Sure. Anyway, thanks again.
She said, giving him one last large wave before pivoting on her heels and disappearing into the distance. There was one thing the taxi driver had learned that night. It would be that the ladies with obscene colored hair could potentially be rather nice.